We're diving deep today into a story that feels like something you'd see in a movie. A targeted killing of a Fortune 500 CEO right here in New York, just hours before a massive event.
It's certainly a story that's grabbed everyone's attention. I mean, the audacity of it all, right? This wasn't just any CEO. This was Brian Thompson, head of UnitedHealthcare. And it happened in one of the, you would think, most secure cities in the world.
Absolutely. This all happened December 4th, 2024, near the New York Hilton Midtown. They were about to start a big investor conference there. We've got reports from CNN, ABC, the New York Times. There's even a LinkedIn post from a United Healthcare employee. So, where do we even begin with all this? What jumps out at you?
Well, the early reports all seem to agree that this was a targeted attack. CNN sources are saying the gunman was actually waiting for Thompson, dressed for the cold weather, masked, and he shot him from about 20 feet away. That level of planning, that's not random.
And WABC talked to an eyewitness who gave a description of the gunman: height, clothing, even mentioned a backpack. Seems like the police are putting together a pretty detailed picture, even though he's still out there.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because even with those details, CNN's also reporting he got away on a bicycle, possibly headed into Central Park. That's a pretty big area to disappear into. Makes you wonder about the planning. Even the escape route.
And you have to think about the timing, too. The city was getting ready for the Rockefeller Center tree lighting just a few blocks away. That must have been a challenge for the investigation.
Oh, absolutely. You've got security already ramped up for an event like that, thousands of people in the area, and then you're trying to find an armed suspect at the same time. Logistically, talk about pressure. Nightmare.
And amidst all of this, they had to cancel that investor conference. There's this LinkedIn post from a United Healthcare employee, Lori Burleson, that really drives home the human side of this whole thing.
Yeah, her statement was just shock and grief. And it's a good reminder, Thompson's death, this isn't just a headline. This is a real loss for his family, his friends, his coworkers, and her post really brings that home.
So we have a high-profile CEO, a brazen attack in broad daylight, a suspect still at large, and a city on edge. Where do we go from here? What happens next, in your view?
Well, the police are going to be under enormous pressure to find this guy. They need to figure out why this happened. They need to reassure the public. I
Yeah.
mean, this whole situation, it could have a ripple effect, not just on the city's security, but corporate America as a whole.
That's a really good point. What are some of the bigger implications you see coming out of this?
Well, I think other CEOs, particularly those leading these high-profile companies, they're going to have to look at their own security. Think twice about public appearances. This could be a real turning point in how we think about personal security,
Yeah.
especially for people in the public eye.
It's a sobering thought. For now, the big question remains: why? Why was Thompson targeted? What are some possible motives in a case like this?
Well, the motive, it could be so many things. It could be personal, some past grievance, a business deal gone bad. Maybe there's some personal connection to Thompson we don't even know about yet.
Or it could be tied to his role at United Healthcare.
Exactly. Was this about his position in the company? Was someone trying to send a message? I mean, think about it. United Healthcare, they're huge in the healthcare industry. Decisions they make affect millions of people. Could this be fallout from one of those decisions?
Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your head around the scope of that. All the different people affected by United Healthcare's decisions, it's got to make the investigator's job that much harder.
Oh, for sure. But I'm sure they're looking into it all. Financial records, recent
Mm.
policies, legal battles. They'll be trying to find anyone who had a really strong reason to go after Thompson.
And we can't forget the gunman himself. He's still out there, possibly armed. It's a bit unnerving to think about the threat he poses.
Yeah, definitely unsettling. The longer he's out there, the more chance he takes another shot at someone else. Maybe even another high-profile target. The NYPD must be under a ton of pressure right now.
Especially with that escape route into Central Park, that can't make their job any easier.
No, not at all. Central Park, that's a tough place to conduct a search. Dense woods, all kinds of entrances and exits, even bodies of water. It's the perfect place to disappear, even for a little while. And sometimes that's all it takes.
I read somewhere that investigators think he might have had help, like an accomplice was waiting for him.
It wouldn't surprise me. Could have had someone there with a change of clothes, a different getaway vehicle,
Hmm.
or maybe just to help him blend into the crowd. Would definitely make escaping a lot easier.
And you think about that CNN report, how the gunman was waiting for Thompson, makes it seem even more calculated.
Yeah, it definitely points to premeditation. A level of patience you don't usually see in a crime of passion. This wasn't spur of the moment. This guy knew what he was going to do, knew how to use his surroundings to his advantage, picked a time and place that gave him a quick escape route.
Do you think those witness descriptions we talked about,
Right.
the height, clothes, the backpack, do you think that will be enough to narrow down the search?
Those details help, but it's still just a partial picture. It's not hard to change your clothes, throw on a disguise. What they really need is something more distinctive, like a scar or a tattoo, some kind of habit that really sets him apart.
Besides finding this guy, they still have to figure out why. Why Thompson? Any chance the investor conference itself could be tied to the motive?
Possibly. Maybe the goal was to disrupt the event, send a message to the company. I wonder if there were any big announcements or deals planned for that conference. That might give someone a reason to do something drastic.
Which takes us back to that LinkedIn post from Lori Burleson. She talked about how much Thompson would be missed by those who knew him. How do you think a company like UnitedHealthcare moves forward after something like this?
Well, they're going to have to be open and honest about what happened. Show compassion, support their employees, talk to their investors. And they're going to have to take a hard look at their security protocols, make sure something like this can't happen again.
And what about the financial side of things? What kind of impact will this have on their stock price, investor confidence?
Short term, there's probably going to be some ups and downs in the stock price. Investors get nervous when something like this happens. Long term, though, it all depends on how the company handles this, how they address concerns about leadership and security.
Seems like they've got a lot on their plate right now. Not just the grief over losing their CEO, but the practical side of running a Fortune 500 company in the middle of a crisis and a very public investigation.
It's a tough spot to be in. And everything they do in the next few days, the next few weeks, is going to be scrutinized. People are watching to see how they respond, what their priorities are, how they treat their employees, their investors, the public.
This whole deep dive has been fascinating. We've talked about who, what, when, and where. But the why, that's still the big question mark. Probably going to take some time to figure that out.
It's a puzzle, all right. Lots of pieces to put together. What do you think about the methods investigators are using to try to uncover a motive in a case like this?
You know what I'm curious about? Do you think they're looking into organized crime at all? Or maybe even corporate espionage?
Oh, it's definitely possible. I mean, organized crime, they've got a long history in this city. And they've certainly got the resources to pull off something like this. Corporate espionage, well, that's always a possibility too, right?
Hmm.
Especially in a competitive industry like healthcare.
It's funny, though, the whole bicycle escape. You wouldn't think someone would use a bike to get away after something so serious.
It is kind of strange, isn't it? Maybe he knows the city really well, knows how to use the streets and parks to avoid being caught. Or maybe he chose it on purpose, because it's so unexpected, a way to blend in and just disappear.
We've talked a lot about the possible motives and the challenges facing investigators, but what about the city itself? How do you think this has impacted New York?
Well, I think it's rattled people. It's a reminder that even in a place like New York, even with all the security, things like this can still happen. It makes you feel less safe, especially at a time when people should be celebrating, getting ready for the holidays.
It makes you realize nobody's really immune to this kind of violence, not even the people at the top.
That's right. And it raises some tough questions about how we balance security with freedom, how we keep people safe without sacrificing what makes a city like New York so special, that vibrancy and openness. It's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, it's a tough question, and there's really no easy answer. But we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. The who, the what, the when, the where. But the why? That's still the big mystery, isn't it?
It is, and that's often the hardest part to figure out in these cases. You can gather all the evidence, all the facts, but sometimes the motive remains elusive.
So where does that leave us? We have a CEO who's been murdered, a city that's on edge, a gunman who's still out there somewhere. What are your final thoughts?
For me, what's striking about this case is how it really highlights the interconnectedness of everything. How one act of violence can have these ripple effects that impact so many people, individuals, companies, the city as a whole. And it also underscores how important it is to stay informed, ask questions, seek out different perspectives, especially in a world where the information is constantly changing.
That's a great point. And as we learn more about what happened, it's important to remember the human side of all this. This isn't just a news story. A CEO was killed. A family lost a loved one.
Absolutely. And a company is now facing a very uncertain future.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I hope you found this deep dive informative and thought-provoking.
It's been a pleasure sharing my insights with you.
And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into this complex and evolving story. As always, we encourage you to stay engaged, keep asking questions, and seek out diverse perspectives, because the more we understand, the better equipped we are to navigate a world that's constantly changing.